Generally Famous is proudly brought to you by Oppo. Kia ora, te ora, and welcome to Generally Famous. I'm Simon Bridges, and every week I talk to generally famous but always interesting guests about life, love, and what makes them tick. Today, a Kiwi singer and songwriter who's been compared to everyone from Nina Simone to Bjork, and whose distinctive and evolving style defies neat characterisation. Kimbra has had huge success, winning Grammys, plural, the third New Zealander ever to do so for somebody that I used to know. Won many other awards, has 4 studio albums, including her latest, A Reckoning. We're going to talk a lot about that. And is today still subject to much critical acclaim and over 8 million, I've done my homework, monthly listeners on Spotify, to go with the billion, actually about 1.2 billion, who've listened to her collaboration with Gatia. Welcome to Generally Famous,
Hey,
Kimbra.
what's up? Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, no, thank you. It's so good to have you here. I want to start, I suppose, at the beginning. I've done my homework, as I said in the intro. I know that your dad was a doctor, your mum was a nurse, You've got a little bro, You grew up in Hamilton. We're not going to be mean about Hamilton. I've done that in other podcasts. It's all right.
It's cool, all right.
Yeah. But I suppose the question is, superficially, that's not necessarily what I would think a top musical career kind of background sounds like, right? In the world that you're in. On the other side of it, though, I suppose, your parents were professionals, gave you maybe, I don't know, a security in a sense that, you were free to pursue creativity.
Yeah.
What do you sort of say that kind of, from your background, meant you were destined for what you do?
Yeah, it's a good question because I know what you mean. Like, it could have gone a very different way. I think my parents instilled in me a work ethic, something about just the grind of my dad would see 30 patients a day, you know what I mean? And I had such a respect for his work and maybe the way he was driven toward making a difference. That was really important to me as a kid. I was a real feeler. It's very spiritually inclined from a young age, really a real seeker,
Yes.
what looking for more, wanting to do more, wanting to help. And then when I started doing music, and especially doing it in a more public setting, kind of getting that feedback that wow, that really touched me, or that it was sort of oh wow, I guess not only does this make me happy, but I think I could actually contribute something of worth here. So that was actually kind of how it started, was really being, without sounding too preachy, it's I guess it was kind of a bit of a calling, a
vocation.
Sense of, something beyond pulling me toward this.
Because then there wasn't something else. You weren't going to be
a
doctor or an architect or a...
I just didn't have the brain for it, And, I at one point I was enrolled to go to AUT and study, but I was going to do all kinds of different weird things. And... But I think my parents still knew that that's what I was going to be doing all the time, And
that work ethic, we're going to talk lots more about what you're doing today and your album, but that is, that's strong in you today. You get up every morning and you go at your craft.
Yeah, no, I do. I've been very lucky in my career. Obviously, a few things have happened to me that have musician's dream of being able to strangely become a weird household name for a period of time, right? Yeah. But I also do own the fact that I've worked very hard at what I do and I treat it like a sacred work. Yeah,
and I want to talk to you about spirituality. I want to talk to you about, I think you said something like, heart on your sleeve and your causes, right? Because I know there's some that you feel strongly about. But I think I'm right to say you're writing stuff from 8 or 9 years old.
That's right, yeah.
You've got a guitar not long after that. You're on What Now? Yeah. You're singing the anthem at the NPC. This is the ultimate Kiwi girl's dream, isn't it? You're in Rock Quest. I was in a couple of Rock Quest, I want to say, with a death metal band.
Oh, that's amazing.
Was never placed, I have to say. I played the drums.
Let me tell you this. No other country has a Rock Quest. I lived in the States.
We need to hold on to that stuff.
It is so amazing. Kids stayed in school to do Rock Quest. I'm so impressed by, I wish it was a bigger thing overseas, actually.
Yeah, no, I remember. I don't even know their names, but they just wrote me and they need a drummer. I was all there was, which is not a strong recommend. These guys, and if they weren't doing that, they were spotting cannabis on the stove.
Oh,
but anyway, that's
I
can't remember their names, so that's not defamation, all right? Just legal check just there. And then you sort of you're signing with an independent recording label in Melbourne in 2008, which is what you're 17, 18?
Straight out of high school, man. Yeah.
And at that point of time, where's the, the creative drive, the momentum coming from? Is it still the same as what you said before, sort of you're working at your craft and it's this kind of seeking spiritual kind of finding yourself in music?
And it's also like if you're getting sort of handed opportunities, you go, okay, well, I'm getting affirmed that maybe this is the path to go, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really crucial when you're young, is like just follow kind of where the signs are taking you.
Yes.
And that's an amalgamation of hard work and also just maybe sort of a fate thing of like, okay, well, there's a nice flow going towards this, so let's lean in. And yeah.
You mean like my dad said I had to do law, so I did law?
Bit different, yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky, man. My parents could have pushed me into medicine, but actually they found it a very stressful career.
They wanted more happiness for you.
Yeah, I think they did, yeah. So anyway, I think I was ready to go when I was 17, 18. I was like, I'm pumped. Like, I feel so ready to release a record. But in terms of momentum, I was actually under management that were very careful to have me go very slow. So the producer that I teamed up with, who I was a big fan of because he'd worked on Gautier, who I was just a fan of at the time, he'd only see me one day a week. So can you imagine, you're fresh out of high school, you've been doing a million things every day, and then your whole job is to make a record. You see your producer one day a week, and then the rest of the week, I guess you're kind of writing music, which is an incredibly privileged life, but also kind of challenging and lonely and no structure. So yeah, there was actually a lot of like just sort of
Because I was going to say to you,
patience.
because you're off to Melbourne, you're 17, 18. I presume you go by yourself, right?
Yes, that's right.
Stay
I
in
did.
Hamilton, and you're
Right.
sort of, and I presume you're not going to tell me, well, because it's all worked out, well, and it's all sort of fit together at a level. But I mean, were your parents worried? Do you feel like possibly you were forced to grow up too early? It's a sector not known for its sort of nurturing.
Yeah, totally.
Aroha, and I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did it live up to its bad reputation?
I mean, look, there's a lot of, bad wolves in the music industry, so to speak. Like, there's just a lot of people that are out to exploit, and it's tricky when you're young, and I'll say when you are a young woman, because you're not in a position to necessarily comfortably speak out and speak up for yourself. And you feel, I had a very sort of an attitude like, wow, this person would take an interest in me. I'm just a girl from Hamilton, like everything was just, wow, someone, and I still fall for that these days. Oh, this producer wants me to do. And then, things get complicated, and then they make power moves and withdraw an opportunity from you, and you realize, oh, that was actually really exploitative the whole time. And especially if you ever get involved romantically in the music industry and you realize people, all the lines get crossed, and it can just be such a messy space. And also, artists aren't equipped to understand, unfortunately, money and running a business and stuff. So looking back.
As a gross generalisation, good with money, music artists don't sort of...
No, I don't
there's
think we
this
have the
very small Venn diagram thing in the middle for that. Yeah.
It's really rare that you kind of get the business head and the creative mind. So, yeah, just didn't have the skills for that. And... that's why I know what I know now, and I don't regret any of it because I'm empowered to help younger artists to be like, look, ownership is everything, I signed to Warner Brothers when they were still doing 6-album record deals. So now I'm actually just doing distribution on my records, and I sort of have these splits that sway my way.
You're still with Warner Brothers?
I'm not, no. So this is the first album I made as a sort of independent artist. And a few of my friends have said that. They're like, wow, this sounds like an artist that's
that sounds like
freed from their label.
like you're good with money. That means you get to cream it, don't you?
Nope. It just means everything's out of pocket, It's like, of course, I'm very, privileged, but it's like when you become an indie artist somewhat, you are the bank. So it's also a little bit of an unstable life when you've had the sugar daddy of the big label.
Yes. Yeah. And your influences back then. Take me back to that teenage, 17, 18-year-old. What was floating your boat in music at that point?
Yeah, I think I had like a bit of a rebel nature with music when I was young. I liked people who were pushing the boundaries a bit, and I liked a lot of funk but heavy rock. I had like a metal phase as well. I loved a lot of jazz singers. I was drawn to like...
Everyone needs a metal phase.
Everyone needs a metal
given you mine.
phase, honestly, especially if you want to be like... Rhythm is my language, right? Syncopation and funk, and that's why funk's amazing. But so much of like even death metal is like, a lot of it is a lot of Latin rhythms, like... like that sort of rhythm, and then you put big distorted guitars on, jang, 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 jang. And I'm like,
Yes.
if you just learn rhythm and you don't think about like, oh, that's a distorted guitar, it's really abrasive. It's actually like, it's just a language.
Does it lack a little bit of melody though? Need a little more high and low.
I'd listen to something else for melody. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I just started getting really into, that's why I'd like love classical for melody, or I'd love, and so I think that says a lot about who I am, is I'm quite drawn to the outskirts and kind of, the spaces where things were a little bit juxtaposed.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's remained in the work.
You're then getting given Grammys by Prince.
I mean...
Right, like, so, and again, I hope I'm being cruel because your albums amaze me, but I know your 4 albums, your body of work, and your studio albums are huge work, effort, creative application, I'm sure struggle. So there's all that. But it's kind of like, but the Grammys, as I understand it, you work in, got you there, you lay it down, and you're out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, except for the 14 hours of body paint, nude, and the music video.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, you're right.
Well, some people do that for fun. I mean,
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like, it is just so crazy. Like, as musicians, we think that this one thing is going to be our big break, and then it ends up being the randomest thing.
Yes.
Like the jingle you wrote for like a dumb ad or something, and then suddenly that gave you the money to start your own label, and that's what, you know what I mean? So it's just...
Albeit you needed all the other things to be there in that room, right?
Imagine if I hadn't had a record when that song dropped, and I had to struggle to put together my album under the influence of a huge label.
Right? Yeah.
God, I mean, I had an entire record.
Yes. How do you, and just on the Grammys and, Prince, who, one of the most singular artists, of all times in modern history. How do you reflect back on that? Is it kind of like, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it just, well, that was awesome, that's that? Or is there any bittersweetness about it? Because I don't know.
Well, Wally and I, Wally is Gautier, we're best of friends, and I think, I just look back and I think, man, how blessed was I to like go through that with such an amazing person? Like, it was a very deep time of friendship.
Where's he? In Aussie?
He's in New York, so we both, live there. But also, I guess I will say that I was, because of that work ethic and that sort of, I guess, somewhat perfectionism, I also was not always there. I was really busy and I was touring all the time, and it was hard to really be super present to those moments and be like, wow, this is a milestone.
You were living in the future.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm different now. Like, I'm way more like...
You probably had to, in fairness, though, back then.
I think so too. I felt so much pressure,
Yeah.
to keep up the momentum.
And
but now I just care less, It's good.
Maybe there's something we all, no, we don't all, but we try and do as we get older and possibly wiser. I mean, as you say, you're writing songs. Mm-hmm. You've then, because you've got the Grammys, but you were ready to go because you'd done the mahi and you had your album there. And you moved to LA, and as you say, you're signed by Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah, that's right.
LA?
I don't know, man. It wasn't for me. It's like we all need the resistance of a city that we struggle in. I think it's important for your creative growth. But I moved to New York eventually.
Sort of got the best and the worst of life.
Totally. LA. Yeah, that's very true. It is. I moved to New York eventually because the lifestyle suited me. I'm really great with spontaneity. I like having an idea and being able to execute it that moment, Whereas Los Angeles does have a very sort of, you set up your plan for the day, you spend most of your day in traffic, just boring stuff like that really does get you down after a while. And I'm not about the fancy like fame shit at all, you know. So,
and I want to come to that, and because I hear you. So you're upstate New York, I believe now. You've been there how many years?
Well, I've just moved back to the city, so actually, it wasn't. It was amazing during pandemic, but I think, again...
Enough of those beautiful trees and the squirrels
too many mountains,
and a little bit of snow and mountains. But real. Hard to get a coffee.
But remember, I'm from New Zealand, so I do get to...
The perfect life needs both
land.
of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I've realised that I thrive best in the two ends of the spectrum, complete contemplation and a little bit of chaos.
Change is as good as a break, or whatever they say, right? I think changing things up makes a big difference. What's normal, in quotes, life look like for you now? I'm just trying to, because in New Zealand, you know, you're a pop star and all of that, but you know, I presume you have a kind of a normal.
Totally.
You know, you wake up, you have some breakfast.
Totally. You want to know? Yeah, I'll tell you everything. Okay.
Not everything.
Yeah. No, I have a dog. So honestly, it's a very domesticating part of my life. She's a big part of my life.
What sort of dog we talking?
Shiba Inu. They're a Japanese breed.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the days wrapped up and making sure she's taken care of. And
what's her name?
Nadi. Yeah, she's great. So I like to cook. I specifically like to cook Ethiopian food. I'm very
Wonderful.
like niche on
We're going to
things.
come to Ethiopia. I've been to Ethiopia.
Have you? I've been as well. Yeah.
In my sort of like, it's not all about me, but my second year of Parliament, no one else wanted to go to Ethiopia, and someone from the Parliament needed to go.
Wow.
And I took my wife, and I remember she was crying within about 4 minutes, actually, and you know, just the malnutrition and but beautiful people, just amazing country. We still have. This is so superficial, but sort of trinkets, mementos, some great big Ethiopian crosses. And I don't know, somehow, I still think it's the best trip I did as a member of Parliament. And I did a lot of trips.
Yeah, I bet you
did. It's so anyway.
No, I'm in agreement.
I've just taken over here. This is
No. That's great.
Ethiopian food.
Yep, I get very niche about certain things I'm into. You know, watercolors.
Less likely to get a bad stomach from your Ethiopian food, I'm guessing. I was
you
not
can
well
handle it. True.
In Addis Ababa, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of spices and so I like that. I mean, I try to, you know, I like to move my body and do yoga and, you know, take time for silence throughout the day and, you know, really invest in my relationships and friends. I like to have people over for dinner.
Big group of friends or small group of
I'm more of a person that has, like a real tight 5 or 6. You know,
and actually, you an extrovert or an introvert?
I'm an introvert. Yeah. I do get drained from crowds.
I suspect the best. Well, it's a gross generalisation, but many of the best artists are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the stage is where we come alive. So you know, in music, of course, I'm highly extroverted, but as soon as
well, it doesn't mean you're scared of people. It just means
that's
you.
A good
you know,
differentiation.
You don't want to be with 17 people talking at you.
And it's just about energy reserves. Like some people are genuinely built up from time socially, and others are drained. You know.
I'm going to talk about your music in a second. Well, you want to talk about it, but has it been a? I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but has it been a hard life? I mean, you think, you know, it's sort of. I know it's all you know, but.
It's a good question. I mean, you know, because I have been exposed to so much of the world, you know, especially places like Ethiopia, I'm well aware that, you know, I know what a hard life looks like. And I've walked into this world with a ton of things going for me, in terms, you know what I mean? So, but...
Well, you grew up in Hamilton. I mean,
I was off to a great start. Yeah.
You won the location lottery there, my friend.
I love it. I freaking love Hamilton. So I will say it's been a bit of a
it's basically a suburb of Auckland these days, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's been a bit of a lonely life at times. Yeah, so maybe not.
Highs and lows?
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, artists, especially like myself, we're deeply sensitive people. And, you know, feel a lot. So, you know, when you take a loss, whether it's an end of a relationship or a death or anything, you know, you're in it, and then you have to go on the road, and there's not a lot of time. There's a lot of turning up and doing game face, and I'm not very good at the whole fake it till you make it thing. So that's been challenging at times to have to live up to an ideal. When sometimes it's just not how you feel turning up that day.
Yes.
And, you know, you don't parallel with your friends through uni and get to live together and do the parties. And, you know, you've got a life that, you know, a niche amount of people really understand. So lonely's maybe a better word. Hard, oh, of course, but I'm a human, you know. We've all had hard stuff. I'm not any more potent in my world, except that perhaps you're just a little bit more of a public face.
I suppose if you worked in a... manual job or even an office job, you know, every day it's kind of there, and you know, and you go home and you watch Netflix and you get up in the morning, and that's whereas I imagine your world has a lot of highs and lows.
That's right. No,
you know,
you're
on, it's unbelievable, and then it's kind of like, I got the same breakfast in the morning. I don't know. It just seems.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of peaks and troughs. But, you know, the reason why I wouldn't change that is I get this great privilege of getting to, like, really feel my feelings, you know? And I think we're learning how important that is, because that life that you're talking about, that's a bit more of the like, yep, we do the same thing every day. What we risk is repressed feelings and not facing stuff. And we just going through the loop, and then life hits you with something and you know, that's it. You can't handle it. So I get this great privilege of getting to kind of do therapy every day and, you know, process what I'm going through and turn it into something beautiful. I mean, what an honor to take the broken, something so hurtful that happened to me, and be like, I want to create a melody out of this that's going to make you cry. I mean, I don't take it for granted for 1 second.
Amazing. I'll let you, because you live in the US, claim the fifth on this if you want, but do you ever see yourself moving back to New Zealand, or is it a case that honestly it's, for what you do in your creative world, too small and you can't get what you need here in this, you know, if I put it that way, my words, not yours, but small pond? Right,
yeah. I mean, it's just like the population is just really small, right? So even just
some suburbs of New York.
Yeah, right, exactly. So just to even be like sustainable, just thinking practically, right, from a money standpoint. But I mean, God, I do think about that. I can't explain how relaxed I am as a human being here. Like I exhale and I just kind of, it's home. I have such a connection to the nature as well, you know, the forest and the volcanoes and the lakes. I mean, the lakes are where I first started writing. Like that's where I was compelled to sing, was when I looked out at landscapes. It is really far away from the world, you know, so I think there is something where I'm someone who quite likes to be in the thick of it, you know, and I actually think it's really great as a human being to be kind of faced with the issues every day, you know, on the subway. Like you're seeing homelessness right in front of you, you're seeing political, you know, warfare basically, and you're having to be forced to engage, which I think is healthy for a person like me. But time of life, right? Like absolutely the idea of having children and not integrating New Zealand into their lives is unthinkable for me.
Like, you're 32?
I am, yeah. So 30s change as a woman, right? Like, just got to think about the bigger stuff. And, yeah, so I do have a dream, honestly, of being able to sort of do both in line with that creative stuff of, like, what would it look like to spend summers or just do it a good half of the year in New Zealand and then back to the grind, go tour, where my biggest market is the States and actually, you know, Mexico and Latin America. So having that access to countries without doing, you know, what are we talking, 16 to 20-hour flights. Your body changes too, right?
Yeah.
So you can't do the grind like you used to.
Yeah, no, it is a long way. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, we've established your adult life has been offshore, right? I suppose you really answered for us what you miss about New Zealand. I agree with you on the lakes. Yeah. It's well, the lakes are underestimated, New Zealand Kiwi lakes. They're fantastic. My wife, who's from the UK, thinks that as well. That wasn't a question, by the way. I thought there might have been a question there, but, you know, let's talk music.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, you know.
Crazy thought,
Who knows, what a crazy thing. Your songwriting, where do they come from? Is there a generalisation you can make about that, or is it just...
Well, you know, every songwriter is different. Some people are really words focused. Yeah. So the words come first. They have a concept, they've got a poem. I'm interestingly rhythm focused, so I have to feel the beat in my spirit. So maybe I'll be out with a friend and there'll be like a drum circle in the park and I'll be like, oh, and I'll get out my phone, I'll record it, then I'll play the rhythm back to myself and then maybe recreate it, you know, on the computer with my drum samples. That might be a starting point. You know, rarely but beautifully, sometimes a melody will come from the ether and I'll be singing it in my brain. I have to create a sound world before I get into lyric. So
you don't sit there and you think this song's going to be about that guy who really screwed me over. I'm going to give him a kicking.
I mean, look, I lock it away for sure. It's there. You know what I mean? I know it's coming in a song, but I'm waiting for the sound bed that's going to support that. Sometimes I'll create a chord progression. I'm like, this sounds like the way that guy screwed me over. So now I'm going to write about that. Because those chords are like sticky and clustered and they're making me feel the tension of that relationship. So that's how it works for me. But then, of course, like everything, then a song comes along, breaks all the rules. You make a poem, you sit down at the piano, and it happens in a freaking hour. Like, there's really that's the beauty.
So as a generalisation, you are perspiration more than inspiration. You work at it, you get it together. You haven't got the words. You're and as we know from it's layered, and I presume has iterations and can come out quite differently once you're by the final product.
Absolutely, yeah, multiple versions. Yeah, perspiration is interesting because you're right that's a really important part of the songwriting process. But at the very inception, the less work, the better. I think of it as following a little, there's a molecule that's glowing in the air, and you're like, where's it going to go? And it's pure inspiration. It's got to feel like you're just servicing something that's coming. That's
already there.
Yeah. And that's that rhythm thing though, right? Like you hear something and you're like, your body's moving. Why is it? So you're following what's happening here. You're not working at all. You're just. Yeah.
Almost subconscious.
Subconscious, yep.
Primal, maybe is the word.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited about Oppo. Oppo is breaking into the very top echelon of world-leading smart devices as a manufacturer and an innovator. They make an incredible range of beautiful phones, not to mention tablets and smartwatches. Basically, they've turned technology into an art form. These things are seriously good looking. Their phones are brilliantly practical too, with a range of fantastic features that will help you to unlock your inner creative. And their charging is next level. I'm sure like me you've had times when you've waited and what felt like hours for your phone to fill with juice. That won't be a problem with Oppo. They've just got the best charging technology widely available in New Zealand. In fact, you'll have 50% of your battery full in just 12 minutes. This is game-changing stuff. I think you can tell why I'm excited about Oppo. There's lots of reasons why more and more people are getting excited about Oppo. So do what I did and check them out online at oppo.com/nz. I remember reading, I don't know what you think about Elton John. I'm not a massive fan because he only gave me half a show.
Oh, really? Bummer.
Back in New Zealand. He didn't give the money back. But anyway, we're not going to go there because I've told that story too many times. He, in his book, describes it basically, if it comes to him in 15, 20 minutes, he's got a song. If he doesn't, he discards it, right?
I love
He's
that.
a rare kind of, right? I think possibly more have to work at it. And neither's right or wrong, right? I mean, people are just weirdly and wonderfully made, and there's all sorts of ways of doing it.
Yeah.
I referenced Nina Simone and Bjork, but who do you say your influences are?
Yeah. Well, these days, my influences probably fall into the realm of experimental R&B. I think there's so much great work going on in the sort of Frank Ocean and SZA, Chloe and Halle, Kendrick Lamar. I mean, I look to a rapper like that and I think, wow, like not only is the musicality just like out of control, it's jazz basically, but the messaging is so crucial for young black men. And I don't know, so I just like artists who are just kind of on a mission, but also unafraid to push pop music, really, really, because it's the one genre that I really think we can treat it like a melting pot. It doesn't have to be rules.
No.
Yeah.
What are you listening to now?
Right now,
is it that same sort of list, or is it?
I think so. I mean, honestly, when we talk about what's a normal day for me, I listen to a lot of like Philip Glass and Steve Reich and like just avant-garde composers that make a lot of really repetitive and contemplative music. So I don't actually listen a lot to music with vocals when it's just my general. Like day to day.
Why is that?
Why is that? Yeah, I think again, it's like I'm training my brain to listen for things that aren't obvious. Because obviously I'm going to love like an amazing soul singer, But what do I pick out in something that's like a film soundtrack? That's going to make me listen differently. Because my ears are that's where all my work comes from, is from listening, I love an artist called Banks, an American artist, and I'm actually talking to her right now. So like, it's blowing my mind that an artist I was obsessed with is now someone I might potentially be working with. But so I'd put her name out there. There's another artist called Yeba out of the States, a fantastic singer. So there's a couple that I put on at the moment on my Spotify.
Actually, very modern. I thought you might give me some oldies.
That's true. I've always been like that.
People often say Jeff Buckley.
Yeah. Oh, back in the day, bro, I was obsessed. But now now it reminds me too much of being in high school, so I can't listen to Jeff Buckley anymore.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy to think about him that if he'd, who knows what would be happening if he was still here? He might be a washed-up has-been who kind of hadn't produced another good work, or it might be, he might have moved on and have the same, still be an influence because he was moving on to greater and greater things. I think
by the sounds of where it was going, that Sketches for My Sweetheart record, I think he was moving into some really like cool soul, even like some songs on that are kind of R&B, like a lot more. It would have been amazing to see where he would have gone. Yeah.
It seems to me you and him are kind of doing something similar, which is you're both aiming for the sublime or the transcendent.
Thank you for saying that.
You're trying to, and very well too, and I mean that genuinely. That was going to be my next question, actually. I've given you the answer, which has been naughty of me. I mean, what are you trying to do?
I like to come up with mission statements because I think it's good. I've always been... Here's how I'll say it. It's really easy to give up in this industry and to kind of be like disillusioned. And so you got to have your mantras, so to speak. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what are your values? What is important to you? So I do think about it a lot. And my recent one that I came up with is I give people permission to feel and dream. Like through my music, I give them, because I don't think we get a lot of spaces that we feel that real permission to let loose, to be free, to sing at the top of your lungs, to feel stuff that's really difficult and hard. So I like to think of that when you come into my concert or you put on my record, it's a space where you feel that permission to let go and expand, hopefully.
And I suppose music does that in a way almost nothing. Maybe good literature does as well.
Yeah.
Primal or something, or subconscious.
Totally.
Takes you to places you wouldn't go if you're just kind of thinking it through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's an unreasonable question because I don't think you will, but would you categorise what you do? I mean, you're not soul, jazz, funk, pop. You're trying to be all of that, aren't you? Or you're taking from all of that.
Yeah, it's probably my blessing and my curse in the music industry. Yeah. It's like, it's like probably given me my edge, but then probably restricted me from different kinds of commercial success because maybe it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because I think I've heard you say before, you don't want your music to be safe. You want to experiment, challenge, push into places that aren't stereotypical, right? I mean, that's amazing. But isn't there, and maybe the trade-off's one you don't care enough about, so it doesn't. But there is a trade-off, isn't there, which is that if you do that, you'll get the critical acclaim from those music magazines that no one reads, but have their influence in their own sort of worlds. But you don't get the superstardom of, I don't mean to be mean to these artists, but an Adele or a Taylor Swift or an Ed Sheeran.
Totally.
Who kind of, what Ed Sheeran is, he's doing supermarket music.
Yeah, and he's going to give you it every time, and that's a beautiful consistency that people have with that artist.
So you accept that trade-off?
I do, yeah. I mean, but also like... we think we know the music game and then it completely surprises us. Like the Gautier song should never have become a hit. It was just not geared toward that, I think.
Yes.
A lot of record labels will say they saw it coming, but I do not believe them. I think I'm never one to assume my career could take a whole nother turn in my 40s. What about actresses that get their massive breaks in their 50s or whatever? It's like, I could get into composing and become a film score person. I could drop an album and one song could be like a real radio success.
You just need a Kate Bush moment where one of them goes on Stranger Things.
Exactly.
And it's all on.
Exactly. And she's had a lot of difficult times trying to get, mainstream success. So, I mean, absolutely. It's just... Honestly, the simplest way I can put it is I just want to make stuff that I really want to listen to, that's exciting to me, because that's how I'm going to literally make people excited about it, is they see that it's like cheating and lying otherwise. If I make a song that I just think is utter crap, but I'm telling you to like it and vote for it and do all that, it's like, it's not authentic at all, So, Yeah, you're right. It's a trade-off. I think fame and money have great uses in the world, though, because when I went to Ethiopia and, of course, realised, and not just Ethiopia, I mean, God, New Zealand, America, I mean, God, the issues are everywhere. But I realised, I was like, man, money is pretty amazing, eh? Like, to be able to really change shit up, like, really make a difference, like... Yeah, so in some ways, I think that it's kind of healthy also to be driven to be successful in your career when you know why you want to do it. Like, I didn't care about that stuff when I hated being, famous and all of that, and I was like, I don't really want any of that life. But then when I saw more stuff that I really wanted to give, help with, then it kind of made me be like, damn, let me get hella strategic about my career. Let me be a businesswoman about this. So it just, it ebbs and flows.
I've been listening to your podcast, which is very new, Playing with Fire. I loved it. And I'm probably repeating myself, but I said earlier I'd come back to spirituality. I mean, it seemed to me a lot of what you're trying to do is music is your path, and maybe it's everyone's or a lot of people's path, and we're joking around it before we got on this podcast. It's your path to that and transcendence. What sort of spirituality and transcendence look like to you?
Yeah, the podcast talks about crucial moments of transcendence in people's lives. So just that moment where you became acutely aware that you're connected to, much more than just your own experience. And then what I like to say is like spirituality is sort of about the initial moment of, awareness or connection to a collective consciousness. And then it's practice. And not like doing your scales, but practice in the sense of like turning up to a practice. So what does that look like for you? Is it meditation? Is it prayer? Is it yoga? Is it walking in nature? Is it drawing? Like people have all kinds of ways of practicing a relationship.
Spiritual languages.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so mine have diversified over the years. I think silence, contemplation is really important to me. Community, like gathering people around and being able to like get on that level, where we just like really support each other on that path. So, I think it also, I found it hard to talk about stuff like this because we have a very limited attention span with it and we like to box people really quickly. Go, oh, you think like that? Cool, you belong to that group. And I think that's really unhelpful. So I started the podcast to have like a space on my terms, without no middleman, translating it into sound bites for me, but like a space where I could really explore all kinds of diverse spiritual paths and transcendent moments, as well as sharing some of my own insights on that in a really safe space where we had, if we want, an hour to talk about it. And so we should. These are big topics that deserve a big space and an amount of time. So I feel really strongly about that, And I'm just really thankful for the platform of podcasts like that. We're moving away from just those snappy headlines
Sure.
that, you know what I mean? Just like make you dumb. It makes people dumb.
Yeah. Less informed.
Yeah,
actually.
Totally.
It's a scary thing when news makes people less informed, which I think there is a danger with. I've thought about going on one of those. And I know you can do it like in the Buddhist tradition, or obviously the Christian
a retreat,
tradition, where you don't speak for a week. I'm just not sure I could handle it.
Oh, yeah. Look, the importance is having a practice of silence before you go.
Yes.
If you can get 20 minutes into your day and then you take 5 days on retreat,
yes.
I think it's absolutely manageable and can be life-changing. I've found a lot of rest in those times.
It's fantastic. How does live performance fit into it all for you? Are you this is silly, but is it studio or live, or you like it all?
It's live. Yeah, that's the
real deal.
That's the real deal for me. Yeah, I make records to get on stage and sing them. Yeah.
And the validation that comes from that, I presume, is there's nothing wrong with that. It's important.
Yeah, no, artists are total narcissists. We need it as much as other people need it. Yeah. We need to be told we're great. Oh my God, we're such self-absorbed assholes.
It's the modern world we live in.
Yeah, no, of course I need it. But it's conversational. Like, it really is conversational when I get on stage. I'm just as interested in your reaction to what I do as I am to, what I'm doing. It's like, it's a place of worship. Not worship, because I don't believe in the artist being messianic, but like...
They are very similar to church services,
I know what you
though,
mean,
aren't they?
yeah.
People put their hands up.
They do.
They're in euphoria.
I know. But in a great live performance, what happens is you actually feel a dissolution of the egos of people on stage and in the crowd, and you actually just feel like you're all kind of one I think that's been the most powerful moment for me.
What would you prefer, a small venue, a pub or whatever it is, intimate setting, or a Wembley or a Madison Garden?
Well, this is another thing I've thought about great fame, like thinking about getting to a stadium size. I'm like, I don't know, if that would be for me. Like,
quite a different concert.
Yeah.
Incredibly different,
Would I even
actually.
see their eyes?
No.
Maybe not.
No.
And eyes are everything for me. Like, if you've been to one of my shows, I'm like hardcore on eye contact. I'm really into like staring into your soul. But
You would not see their eyes.
No, I love a good 500 cap room. That's beautiful. A few nights there, if I got to that point where I could do a residency at a theatre, that'd be great, yeah.
And you've recorded and toured with, I got John Legend. Am I right to say Snoop Dogg?
He's on a song of mine, yeah.
I'd like to get him into a podcast. I feel like we've done about 10 where somehow he's come up. People have been on the Rantan with him, or, he's shaking their hands or something.
Yeah,
you've toured with, some legit Beck,
Yep.
Odessa, David Byrne, obviously Talking Heads fame. Any big ones I've missed?
Oh, gosh. We were on the road to Foster the People for a long time. We've played festivals with all kinds of artists, of course, Tame Impala, and sort of huge acts that we've sort of kind of come up with, alongside. And those are the big ones, yeah, the Roots. It's great. Live music is such a collaboration on stage is a really special thing. Like when you're getting to be in that moment because it kind of, all the celebrity stuff of like, this artist's so much bigger than me or whatever. It's like, when you just get into that space, you're just both musicians jamming. I love that. It's so humbling, like working with massive artists on stage, because they just become another mate you're jamming with.
Amazing, what a privilege. And you're also, you're a notable music producer. I don't have a good sense of this. Who, what, when? What? Give me a sense of that.
Well, I have not, produced for other artists up until now. I'm making my first, I'm producing for a young artist in America, her EP. So yeah, maybe that's something for the future. It's pretty different. Like I like it, but it's weird being like under pressure to work to deadlines, because you're like responsible for their record, and usually I'm the one that's kind of like, yeah, it's a different and more administrative job. But I love like the vision aspect of a producer, that you're helping someone draw out what they want to say. And because of your objectivity, you can see it better than they can, in a way.
Have you written songs for others that are on their albums?
I have, yeah.
You're a superlatively good songwriter. I would have thought that's part of the gig as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I have done a bit of that. One song on my new album called Gun was actually written in a Rihanna writing camp that I was invited to. And it got really close to making it on her album. And then
Amazing.
They, sort of changed some things at the very end, didn't make it on. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just leave that in the iTunes folder. Then I went back to it one day and I was like, you know what? If I changed the production and made it a bit more in my world, I could totally release this song. And it's a great, I believe it's a great song, because it was also, I wrote it with these like really empowered, like badass bitch kind of lyrics. Because I was writing for Rihanna, so I was like, she can say, all these lyrics.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could never say that about me. And then I was like, why can't I say that about me? Like I'm an empowered woman too. So it's kind of a real like cool move to be in that headspace of writing for someone else, but then actually reclaiming it,
Would you have got good coin if she had taken it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Keep you in the Manitoucher custom for another year or something. That's
ownership is everything.
Rihanna writing camp. Isn't that amazing? That's. I thought I knew it all, but look, a few quick ones, and then we'll come into your album. Your favourite collab? Favourite?
Okay. Well, a really big one for me was Daniel Johns from Silverchair.
Right.
So he actually ended up writing about 4 to 5 songs on the record with me, performing. And what was cool is I'd bring in artists like Thundercat and huge kind of, LA-based musicians and put them in a room with like Daniel Johns from Silverchair. That was really interesting to me to kind of facilitate really weird collaborations. And that's more the producer mind, right? Who thinks, that would be really cool with that. I'd say that was just really special just because he was such an inspiration of mine since I was a young kid.
Yeah.
Having Questlove play on the new record, like being there and, producing him, telling him what I wanted, that was pretty massive too.
Your favourite tour?
Let's see. Favourite tour? I think it would have been touring the Golden Echo, which was my second album. I brought a lot of the LA musicians that played on that record out with me. And it was such a raucous live band. This was around the time we did, David Letterman and some really great, Fallon, and we were doing a lot of TV performances. And the band was just so on fire, the musicality of the performances. I was in my total, I'm just going to do whatever I want phase. So it was like, there was a real lack of self-consciousness. That was really, I remember that States tour being kind of like, wow, this is so fun.
Current musician you look up to the most?
Ooh, let's see. I think it probably actually would be Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, I think that's the artist because I saw him recently in New York, and it just made me realize how far you can take live performance, like with choreography and visuals, and again, just sort of a really, especially in a culture like hip hop, it can get quite repetitive and tedious, a lot of the music production and everything as well. So I just look at him as kind of, almost got that slightly prophet vibe as well, where he's coming into a world that really needs him, I think, and is making music that's like real legacy stuff. Like I think it'll really last.
Put it this way, what about favourite dead artist?
Dead artist? Ooh, man.
There's a few of them, but...
Yeah, true. I think for me that would be... Actually, I'm pretty big fan of Billie Holiday. And I just think, that's an artist that I listen to a lot and have taken a lot of sort of inspiration from, and just, I think she's probably one of my favourite of the real, old school kind of singers. And I recently watched the film about her and was just really re-inspired to go back to a lot of that catalogue.
Great pick. You've got a new album out, A Reckoning. Tell us about it and what you're trying to do with it.
I started off this record with an interest in the subject of anger and conflict. I was living in New York right when all of the George Floyd stuff took off, and protests on my street every day, and COVID was just beginning. And it was just like a time where I was also confronting a lot of my own sort of struggles with big feelings, let's say, and anger is a interesting emotion because when it's used to, when it's used in unhealthy ways, it's sort of the most destructive force in our world, right? It's like behind violence and everything. But when it's used for good, like in a protest or kind of standing up for yourself at work, or when it's, it's actually life force and it's vitality and it's sexuality. I mean, so much of the life experience comes from a place of, So I went in exploring that. It actually had a very strong concept. And I had the title, A Reckoning, even before everything became a reckoning in the world, because I wanted to be confrontational. That's how I move through my feelings, is I confront them. I say them to myself, and I heal them that way. So that's how it started. And then as I went down that journey, of course, I discovered that a lot to do with anger is also surrender and vulnerability. And that's why the first single was Save Me, which is such a sort of expression of powerlessness, Mm-hmm. But that's how if you first admit powerlessness, then you can build. That's why AA always starts with surrender, right? All the great world religions always start with surrender prayer. It's like, there's something to that. And then I really just let myself explore all sides of that subject throughout the record.
Your single Replay and the video, I thought was quite challenging and confronting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what's that about?
Well, I mean, it's a journey into the psyche, and into our neuroses as human beings, and into the cyclical, intrusive nature of thoughts that, again, we don't always want to think about and kind of distract ourselves from. But I guess that's just what I do. Like I said, I don't really like to make super safe music, so the confrontational aspect is important to me because it leads me to what I want to say with the next single.
You bet.
Music is always reactive, right? My next song is a song I wrote for my daughter, which is all about motherhood. But it's in reaction to, something that's very subversive and, you're right, challenging.
When you say your daughter that is yet to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, future daughter. Yeah.
And when you talk about that reactive, how's your music changed between Vows and a reckoning?
Well, in the early days, I think I was quite interested in fantasy and like the whimsical side of life, right? Like, and all my dresses, like I dressed like a Disney character, you know what I mean? Like, and I had this hairstyle and I was very like
Was it sort of
a
Harajuku
cartoon.
or something?
Yeah, I was a bit like a cartoon, and I think that was cute and beautiful and like, but probably also like a little heartbreaking, you know, that I didn't totally feel like I could really be myself because I was like, I had to put on so much makeup and hair, like to feel like I could present. Again, like I'm so proud of the work I've done. It's just that my evolution has been learning to become more and more comfortable with myself, become more and more revelatory about what I live with in my life, and probably a little more grounded in my own experience. I've always written about my own stories, but I'd kind of, decorate them in fantasy and in sort of whimsy. Whereas now it's like, I write lyrics like, I don't know, there's just some very difficult lyrics in this new music, saying out loud, I lack the courage to take care of myself. I don't want to say that to people. I wouldn't have said that stuff back then, because it would have been like, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to. Now I realize that art is telling the truth, So say it, and just a little less scared to be judged.
In a sense, then you're saying your music, and I suppose you as a person, are you saying this as well? You're more real and authentic today. You know who you are, and I suppose that's again that's what happens as you age and you mature.
I think you're right for everyone, right? It's like you just get more and more down to the essential.
Yeah.
You just start stripping away the layers. And that's not to say the layers are bad. They're so important and they're great and they're psychedelic and they're fun. But it's cool to be able to peel them away and just get to that core truth that we all need to hear, I
was going to ask you about your causes and so on. We talked a bit about that. I suppose I want to ask you this. You're 32. The world is your oyster. Thinking about the future, there's a lot left, but what's left on your bucket list in terms of you? What are the obvious things you see for yourself that you kind of say, I still got to do that?
Totally.
Got to do that.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I have my little, dreams of, I'd love to release a book of poetry, for example, and, really, do something without melody that's really in the word field. I'd love to, like I said, really, make a mark on the certain causes that I really care about. They range from, the woman that I've been really lucky to support in Ethiopia, HIV positive, starting businesses.
Is that the core with Terza?
So Terza is another organisation I work with as well that are more based out of Kenya. I'm really passionate about mental health in New Zealand. It's something I'd love to be more involved with. I think that's a hard thing about.
And am I right? Or might have this? Yeah. This is something you feel you've struggled with?
Oh, of course. I mean, God, I'm a singer in the music industry. It's and we all have to a certain degree. Sure. It's just how much we're willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that direct experience is powerful though for young people, right? And when I say make a mark, I'd like to have the time and effort to make it maybe a priority for a period of time. Other goals, I do have dreams of doing more kind of composition work, writing for things like films and there's so much exciting stuff going on in TV series and movies that it's I love that intersection of musicians and movies, and I'm such a big movie buff too, so that would be fun.
You've referenced a couple of times, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but your future daughter, it's perhaps cheesy, but one of your songs, great song, did hugely well on Vows is Settle Down. I mean, is that white picket fence there for you, do you think, sort of in the future in a more I don't know what I'm just going to say, conventional, but that's wrong. Or is it incommensurate at a level with the musical success that you're talking about?
Yeah, I guess I don't think any longer that having kids has to be synonymous with a white picket fence. It's like
Sure.
I love the idea of actually raising kids half in New Zealand, half in New York. I think it'd be awesome to grow up with that kind of diversity, right? But yeah, man, I definitely want to be a mum. I think that's an amazing opportunity if I can have one. I never want to assume that I can, but So that's on the cards. And so that makes you get strategic about what I want the next few years to look like. I plan on releasing a lot of music. I have working on 3 other albums right now, like that have a fully track-listed 10-song albums.
Have you put out what you've done right now? How many more albums would you have?
It would be 4, yeah. It'd be this one and 3 others, yeah. No, I mean, my friends know. It's like that's what I'm working on is a real body of work, which is honestly just because I was bored and depressed during COVID. So it's not because I'm a genius. It's just because I've just had so much
COVID was an
time.
amazing time in that regard, though, I suppose, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, in some ways, yeah.
No, I know, got its issues, but I wrote a book.
It's got its issues.
It's not going to get as many plays as the stuff you do, but, so sometimes that's what happens.
It's got its issues.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on Generally Famous. I'm going to wrap up by asking the questions we ask every guest. They're called General Knowledge. What's the best night out you've ever had?
Ooh, what a tough one. Trying to think where in the world it would have been. You know what I mean? Like what country
like
would it have...
outside of Hamilton.
Well, remember, I left Hamilton when I was 17, so I couldn't even, go to a bar and get a beer. So I haven't really had many crazy nights out in Tron. I mean, my favourite nights in life are generally when I'm with, my favourite people, and they're probably not that wild. Everyone wants, you to say, the night I, met Mariah Carey or something. It's it's just more probably, having really great food, cooking for a bunch of my friends. Great night out would be listening to lots of great music, maybe having a movie night where we all watch a horror movie and hang out with my boyfriend or something. I don't know. I'm just one of those people that really likes quality time over a big blowout night on the piss. That's great too, but I don't know.
Who would you most like to be trapped in a lift with?
I think it would be interesting to spend time with someone who had power in the world so that, if you had a conversation, maybe you could change their mind and, make them, do something different in the world. I'd probably say someone in politics like Barack Obama or something. I'd be interested to spend, what was it, locked in a room?
In a lift.
In a lift. Yeah.
Just sitting there.
Yeah.
Standing there.
No, I really think he'd be
shut.
an amazing person to contemplate life with and to get the inside scoop on really what it is like at that level of government. I think that would be fascinating to talk to someone who really tried to make a change, got there in some ways, someone with that level of intellectual stamina would be interesting to me.
Fantastic. Look, I like to save the most important ones last. If you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
I would be a dolphin. I think they're known for their intellect. They're probably witty. I think they make some beautiful noises, and I am a singer after all. And living underwater would be amazing. I've got land on lock. I know what it's like. I want to go down there. Definitely.
I'm somewhat tempted to try and make a dolphin noise right now, but I don't feel like that's an appropriate way to end this podcast. Kimbra, thank you so much for coming on. You've been listening to Generally Famous. There's a new episode every Wednesday. You can listen to them all at stuff.co.nz/generallyfamous, or wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, if you follow us on Apple or Spotify, any of the podcast apps, in fact, you'll get the latest episode automatically. Go on, it's really quick and easy. I'd love to hear from you. Send your feedback to generallyfamous@stuff.co.nz. And if there's a guest you'd really like me to talk to, contact the same address. Thanks to my producers, Chris Reed and Jen Black. I'm Simon Bridges. I really appreciate you listening. Generally Famous was proudly brought to you by Oppo.